We make promises all the time, but what's the real difference between a casual promise to a friend and one that a court will actually enforce? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down the anatomy of a contract to find out just that.
So think about it for a second. Our entire world pretty much runs on promises, right? From a simple handshake deal to endlessly scrolling and clicking "I agree" online. But what is that secret ingredient? What's the magic formula that turns a simple promise into a legit binding contract? Let's get into it. Turns out, the answer is built on a surprisingly solid foundation. A really good way to think about a valid contract is to picture it as a structure held up by three essential pillars: capacity, consent, and legality. Now, if any one of these pillars is weak, or maybe it's missing entirely, the whole thing can just come crashing down.
Okay, so let's start with that first pillar, the people. Before we even get to what the agreement is about, the law asks a really basic question. Are the people making this deal even legally allowed to make a binding promise? This is the pillar of capacity. Capacity to contract, it's really just a formal way of saying you have the legal competence to make a deal. The law just wants to be sure that anyone entering a contract actually gets what they're signing up for. So the very first check is, are these people even qualified to make this promise?
And the most common, super straightforward requirement for capacity? It all comes down to age. In most places, you have to have reached the age of majority to enter into a contract, and that magic number is generally 18.
And let me tell you, the law is really firm on this. A landmark case, Mohori Bibi versus Darmadaskos, set a huge precedent here. It established that a contract with a minor isn't just something you can get out of. It's considered void ab initio, which is just a fancy way of saying it's void from the very beginning. It's like it never even existed.
But, and this is a really important but, it's all about protection. See, the law isn't trying to punish minors, it's trying to shield them. So while a contract that puts a burden on a minor is totally void, an agreement that's purely for their benefit, say an apprenticeship contract, that can actually be valid, and it can be enforced by the minor.
Okay, let's move on to our second pillar. This is where things build. So we've got capable people. Great, but that's not enough. The law then has to look inside their minds. Was their yes a real yes? Was the agreement made voluntarily? This is the crucial pillar of consent.
For consent to be considered free, it has to be, well, totally clean. The law actually identifies 5 specific things that can poison consent and make a contract fall apart. They are coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. Let's touch on a couple of these.
Coercion is the most obvious one. This is when someone is literally forced into a deal, either through threats of violence or by having their property held hostage. If you sign a contract with a gun to your head, figuratively or literally, that's not free consent, not even close.
Right, that's an easy one to spot. But what about those situations where the pressure isn't so obvious? What if it's coming from someone you completely trust? Well, this brings us to a much trickier concept.
And this is where we get into undue influence. It happens when there's a special relationship, like a doctor and a patient, or a lawyer and their client. One person is in a position of trust, a position where they could dominate the other's will. And if they use that power to get an unfair advantage, the law says that consent was not freely given. And finally, there are simple mistakes. But here's the thing. Not all mistakes are created equal in the eyes of the law. There's a huge difference between being wrong about a law and being wrong about a fact in the agreement. And usually, not knowing the law isn't an excuse.
So here's the kind of mistake that can completely wipe a contract off the map if both parties are wrong about a fact that is absolutely essential to the deal. So say you both agree to the sale of a specific painting, but unknown to either of you, that painting was destroyed in a fire yesterday. Well, there's no real agreement there, is there? The contract is totally void.
Okay, so we've got the right people, they've given their genuine consent, we're almost there. But there's one final pillar our contract has to stand on: legality. The law has to look at the very reason for the agreement and ask, is this whole thing even for a lawful purpose? An agreement is considered unlawful and therefore void if its goal is forbidden by law, if it's fraudulent, if it involves hurting someone, or if a court just thinks it's immoral or bad for the public. It's pretty straightforward. You can't have a valid contract to commit a crime. The purpose itself has to be legit.
Now, We've used the word void a bunch of times, and we've also mentioned illegal. They might sound like they mean the same thing, but in the world of contracts, there is a critical difference between them, and it has some pretty major consequences. Let's break this down.
Here's the key thing to remember. All illegal agreements are void, but not all void agreements are illegal. So, an agreement to commit a crime is definitely illegal, but an agreement with a minor? That's just void. The real difference, as you can see here, is how the law treats other deals that are connected to them. And that's the whole ball game right there. It's all about something called collateral transactions, basically other agreements that are related to the main one. The legality of that first deal can make or break everything else that's connected to it. And this example makes it perfectly clear. Let's say you loan someone money specifically to help them smuggle illegal goods. Because smuggling is illegal, your loan agreement, which is connected to that crime, is also tainted. It's void. You can't sue to get your money back. But now, let's say you loan a friend money to pay off a gambling debt. A gambling agreement is void, but it's not actually illegal. Because of that, your separate loan is a totally valid and enforceable contract. See the difference? And there you have it, the 3 essential pillars that hold up any valid contract. You need the right people with the legal capacity to agree. You need their free and genuine consent, and you need a lawful purpose. That's legality.
So the next time you're about to sign something, or even just hover over that little I agree box, just take a second. You don't need to be a lawyer, but now you know what to look for. Before you commit, just ask yourself, are my pillars standing strong?